When kindergarten teacher Imani Walker comforts a lost little boy in the park, she has no idea his grateful single father is a billionaire in hiding. What begins as kindness becomes the start of an extraordinary love story. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The afternoon sun was warm in Henderson Park. As Imani Walker found an empty bench, she kicked off her sensible flats and wiggled her toes in the grass. At 34, these moments of quiet were precious. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Between teaching kindergarten 5 days a week, tutoring on weekends, and caring for Aunt Rose, who had been battling cancer for the past year, Imani barely had time to breathe. Today was rare. A cancelled tutoring session meant 2 free hours all to herself. A small sniffling sound caught her attention. Imani opened her eyes and noticed a little boy sitting alone on the swing set. His head was down, shoulders trembling. Slightly. He was trying not to cry. Imani glanced around, no parent in sight. The boy, maybe 6 years old, wore a blue t-shirt with dinosaurs on it. His shoelaces were untied, and he kept wiping his nose with his sleeve. Something tugged at her heart. Imani stood up and walked over slowly. "Hi there," she said gently, kneeling, down a few feet away. "Are you okay?" The boy looked up with wide, tear-filled eyes. His lower lip quivered. "I lost my dad," he whispered. Imani nodded, keeping her voice calm. "That must be scary. My name is Imani. What's yours?" "Leo," he said, his voice small. "Well, Leo, I bet your dad is looking for you right now. How about I wait with you until he finds you?" Leo nodded, relief washing over his little face. Imani pointed to his shoes. "Want me to tie those for you? Might be safer for walking." As she tied his shoes, she chatted about simple things. What grade he was in, his favorite dinosaur, what kinds of books he liked to read. Slowly, the fear drained. From his face, a squirrel darted across the playground and Imani gasped dramatically. "Did you see that?" she whispered conspiratorially. Leo shook his head, confused. "That squirrel is definitely a spy," she said, keeping her face serious. "Look how he's watching us. I think he's gathering intel for the Squirrel Intelligence Agency." A tiny smile broke through Leo's worried expression. "That's not real," he giggled. "Oh no, then why is he taking notes behind that tree?" Imani pointed, and Leo laughed, a real laugh this time. They were making up stories about the spy squirrels when Imani noticed a man running across the lawn toward them. He was tall with dark hair, wearing jeans and a simple grey t-shirt. His face was tight with panic that melted into relief when he spotted Leo. "Leo!" he called out, his voice breaking. "Thank God!" "Daddy!" Leo jumped off the swing and ran to his father, who scooped him up in a fierce hug. Imani stood up, brushing sand from her hands. The man looked over Leo's shoulder and froze when he saw her. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise maybe, or wariness. "He's okay," Imani said with a warm smile. "Just a little scared, but we made friends with some spy squirrels while we waited." The man set Leo down but kept his hand firmly on his son's shoulder. "Thank you for staying with him. I turned around for 2 seconds to throw away our lunch. Trash, and he was gone." His voice was deep with an edge of lingering fear. Leo tugged on his father's sleeve. "She's nice, Daddy. She waited with me the whole time and she tied my shoes." The man looked at Imani again, really looked at her this time, taking in her simple sundress, her curly hair pulled back in a casual ponytail, the kindness in her eyes. Something in his expression shifted. "She's more than nice, buddy," he said quietly. Imani felt her cheeks warm under his gaze. There was something familiar about him, but she couldn't place it. "I'm Dorian," he said, extending his hand. "Dorian." "Wells, Imani Walker," she replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm but gentle. "Ms. Walker teaches kindergarten, Daddy," Leo announced proudly with the information she'd shared earlier. "Is that right?" Dorian smiled. "Well, that explains why you're so good with kids," Imani shrugged. "I've always loved children. They see the world differently than we do." An awkward silence fell between them. Imani picked up her purse from the ground. "Well, I should get going. I'm glad everything worked out, Leo. Maybe tie those shoes a little tighter next time, okay?" She winked at the boy, who nodded seriously. "Wait," Dorian said as she turned to leave. Could I buy you a coffee to thank you properly? Imani hesitated. She wasn't in the habit of accepting invitations from strangers, even handsome ones with cute kids. But something in Dorian's voice caught her attention. He sounded lonely. "There's a coffee shop right across from the park," she found herself saying. "I have about an hour before I need to be somewhere." Relief and something like happiness crossed Dorian's face. Perfect. The coffee shop was small and quiet. Leo sat at their table with chocolate milk and a coloring book Dorian produced from a backpack. Imani sipped her latte while Dorian stirred his black coffee. "So, kindergarten teacher," he said. "That must be rewarding and exhausting." Imani laughed. "Both, definitely. 22 5-year-olds with unlimited energy and no filter. But I love it. Every day is different." "Leo starts first grade next month," Dorian said, glancing at his son with obvious pride. "He's excited about the science projects." "You like science, Leo?" Imani asked. The boy nodded enthusiastically without looking up from his coloring. "I'm going to make a volcano that really explodes." "With baking soda and vinegar," Dorian clarified quickly. "Nothing too explosive." Imani smiled. "The classics never go out of style. I still do that demonstration every year with my class." As they talked, Imani noticed how Dorian never mentioned what he did for work. He asked thoughtful questions about her teaching, about the books she liked to read to her students, about her weekend tutoring. He listened intently to her answers, his eyes never wandering to his phone or around the room. He seemed genuinely interested. It was nice, different. "What about you?" she finally asked. "What do you do when you're not rescuing your son from spy squirrels?" A shadow passed over Dorian's face. "I work from home. Tech stuff, mostly. Pretty boring compared to shaping young minds." Before she could ask more, Leo tugged on Dorian's sleeve, requesting another chocolate milk. As Dorian went to the counter, Imani checked her watch. She needed to leave soon to pick up Aunt Rose's medication. "I should get going," she said, when Dorian returned. "My aunt is expecting me." Was that disappointment on his face? "Of course, thank you again for helping Leo. Most people wouldn't have bothered." "I can't imagine just walking past a child who needs help," Imani said, gathering her things. "It was nice meeting you both." Leo looked up from his coloring. "Will you come to the park again? I can show you my T-Rex impression." Imani smiled. "I come here sometimes on Thursdays. My tutoring session ends early." She hadn't meant to share that, but Leo's face lit up. "That's tomorrow, Daddy. Can we come tomorrow?" Dorian looked embarrassed. "Leo, Miss Walker probably has plans." "It's just Imani," she corrected him with a smile. "And I might stop by after. My session ends at 4. No promises, though." They walked out together. At the street corner where they would part ways, Imani waved goodbye to Leo, who waved back enthusiastically. "Thank you again," Dorian said softly. "Not just for staying with him, but for being kind." There was something in his voice, something that hinted at a man who hadn't experienced much kindness lately. "Anyone would have done the same," she said. Dorian shook his head. "No, they wouldn't. Trust me on that." Imani walked away, feeling strangely light. It had been a long time since she'd had a conversation with an adult that wasn't about work or her aunt's health, and longer still since that adult had been an attractive, seemingly kind man with a sweet son. Not that it mattered, she told herself. Their paths had crossed for one afternoon. Life would go back to normal tomorrow. But the next day, after her tutoring session, Imani found herself walking toward Henderson Park. Just for some fresh air, she told herself. Not because of the man with the kind eyes and his dinosaur-loving son. She spotted them instantly. Leo was on the monkey bars, with Dorian standing nearby, arms half raised, as if ready to catch him at any moment. Leo saw her first. "Imani! You came?" he shouted, scrambling down and running toward her. Dorian turned, and the smile that spread across his face made her heart skip a beat. "We brought cookies," Leo announced. "Daddy made them last night. They're chocolate chip." "Did he now?" Imani raised an eyebrow at Dorian, who looked slightly embarrassed. "Leo might have insisted we needed cookies in case we ran into you," Dorian admitted. "He's been talking about spy squirrels all day." They sat on a bench while Leo played on the slide. Dorian offered her a slightly misshapen cookie from a plastic container. "So you bake?" she asked, taking a bite. It was actually delicious. I'm learning, Dorian said. When it's just the two of us, I figure I should know how to make more than frozen pizza. It's just you and Leo? Imani asked before she could stop herself. Dorian nodded, his expression carefully neutral. For 2 years now, his mother isn't in the picture. I'm sorry, Imani said softly. Don't be, Dorian replied, watching Leo climb back up the slide. We're better off this way. The hardness in his voice surprised her, but then he turned to her with a softer expression. What about you? No husband or kids wondering where you are? Imani shook her head. No husband, no kids. Just me and my Aunt Rose. She raised me after my parents died, and now... She hesitated. Now she's sick, and... It's my turn to take care of her. Dorian's eyes filled with understanding. That can't be easy with your teaching schedule. It's not, Imani admitted. But you do what you have to for family, right? Dorian nodded, looking back at Leo. Everything for family. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Leo play. Imani realized she felt strangely at ease with this man she barely knew. There was something genuine about him, something real in a world that often felt full of pretense. As the sun began to set, Imani stood up reluctantly. I should go. Aunt Rose will be waiting for dinner. Of course, Dorian said, standing as well. He hesitated, then asked, would it be too forward to ask if you might come to the park again? Maybe Saturday morning? Leo has been asking for a picnic. Imani knew she should say no. She had tutoring on Saturday mornings and 1,000 other responsibilities. But looking at Dorian's hopeful expression and Leo waving from the top of the slide, she found herself nodding. I have tutoring until noon, but I could come after that. Dorian's smile was worth the rearranging of schedules she'd have to do. We'll be here, he promised. Imani walked home with a strange feeling in her chest, something like happiness, something like hope. She had no idea who Dorian Wells really was, or what this connection might mean, but for the first time in a very long time, she was looking forward to something that was just for her. What she didn't know was that Dorian Wells was more than just a single dad who baked cookies. Much more. And the simple friendship beginning between them was about to become far more complicated than either of them could imagine. Saturday arrived with clear skies and perfect picnic weather. Imani rushed through her tutoring session with 12-year-old Zach, who needed help with fractions. Her mind kept drifting to the park, to Leo's excited face and Dorian's warm smile. Ms. Walker, you seem distracted today, Zach said, tapping his pencil on his math workbook. Imani refocused. Sorry, Zach, let's try this problem again. When the session finally ended, Imani hurried home to change. She caught herself trying on 3 different outfits before settling on simple jeans and a yellow blouse. It's just a picnic, she reminded her reflection. With a little boy and his dad, not a date. But her racing heart suggested otherwise, at sea. The park, Leo spotted her immediately and ran to greet her. Imani, we got a red blanket and sandwiches and cookies and juice boxes. Leo grabbed her hand and pulled her toward a shady spot under a large oak tree. Dorian stood as she approached. He wore khaki shorts and a blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked good. Really good. We were afraid you might change your mind, he said with a smile that didn't quite hide his relief. And miss spy squirrel surveillance? Never, Imani replied, making Leo giggle. The picnic blanket was spread out with a proper feast. Sandwiches cut into triangles, fruit, salad in plastic containers, potato chips and homemade cookies. Did you make all this? Imani asked, impressed. Dorian rubbed the back of his neck. I might have gone overboard. It's been a while since we've had a friend join us. The way he hesitated on the word friend made Imani's cheeks warm. They ate and talked while Leo alternated between joining their conversation and running off to collect interesting leaves and rocks. The conversation flowed easily between them, jumping from favorite movies to childhood memories to funny classroom stories. So you never told me where you work, Imani said, accepting a cookie from the container Dorian offered. That familiar shadow passed over his face. I run a software company. I mostly work from home now. That must be convenient for taking care of Leo, Imani said. Dorian nodded. That's why I made the change. After the divorce, Leo needed stability. One present parent is better than two absent ones. His mother doesn't see him at all, Imani asked carefully. Dorian's jaw tightened. Vanessa decided her career and social life were more important. She signed away custody in exchange for... He glanced to make sure Leo was out of earshot. A very generous settlement. I'm sorry, Imani said softly. That must have been hard on both of you. Dorian's expression softened. It was rough at first. But honestly, we're happier now. Just the two of us. He hesitated, then added, until we met you. Before Imani could respond, Leo came running back. Daddy, Imani, look what I found. He held up a smooth, flat stone. It's perfect for skipping. There's a pond on the other side of the park, Dorian said, standing and brushing crumbs from his shorts. Want to see if that stone can skip? The three of them packed up the picnic and walked to the small pond. Dorian showed Leo how to flick his wrist to make the stone bounce across the water. Imani watched them, father and son, laughing together in the sunlight. Something tugged at her heart, a longing for something she'd never really had. A family. Her phone buzzed, breaking the moment. It was a text from her neighbor who was checking on Aunt Rose. Everything okay? Dorian asked, noticing her frown. My aunt needs her medication. I should get back, Imani said, disappointed their time was ending. We'll walk you home, Dorian offered immediately. Oh, you don't have to. We want to, he insisted. Leo nodded enthusiastically. Their walk was slow, with Leo stopping to investigate everything interesting along the way. When they reached Imani's small apartment building, she felt strangely nervous about them seeing where she lived. This is me, she said, gesturing to the modest brick building. Can we meet your aunt? Leo asked innocently. Leo, Dorian scolded gently. That's not polite to ask. It's okay, Imani said, but maybe another time. She gets tired easily. Leo nodded solemnly, then launched into a hug that caught Imani by surprise. She hugged him back, meeting Dorian's eyes over the boy's head. The tenderness in his gaze made her breath catch. Thank you for today, Dorian said softly. It's been really nice. It has, Imani agreed. Thank you for the picnic. An awkward moment passed as neither seemed to know how to say goodbye. We come to the park every Saturday, Dorian finally said, and sometimes after school on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Imani smiled, understanding the invitation. Good to know. Over the next 3 weeks, Imani found herself at Henderson Park more often than not. Sometimes just for half an hour after work, sometimes for whole afternoons on weekends. Each time, Dorian and Leo were there waiting, their faces lighting up when they spotted her. They fell into a comfortable rhythm. Dorian would bring snacks or sometimes take out coffee. Imani started bringing books to read to Leo. They'd watch him play, talking quietly about everything and nothing. Dorian never tried to touch her, never made any obvious romantic moves, but Imani felt the connection between them growing stronger. The way his eyes followed her, the way he leaned in when she spoke, the way he remembered everything she told him. One Thursday evening, as the sun was setting and Leo was getting tired, Dorian walked Imani home as usual. Leo's birthday is next. Weekend, he said as they strolled. Nothing fancy, just a small party at our place. He'd love it if you could come. Imani hesitated. Going to their home felt like crossing a line, making this, whatever it was, more real. You don't have to, Dorian added quickly, misreading her silence. I know you're busy with your aunt and work. I'd love to come, Imani interrupted. If you're sure it's not imposing. Dorian's smile was answer enough. Here's the address, he said, handing her a small card. Saturday at 2. Imani looked at the card. The address was in Oakwood Heights, one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the city. Her surprise must have shown on her face. My software company does well, Dorian said simply, a hint of discomfort in his voice. That Saturday, Imani took a bus to Oakwood Heights, clutching a wrapped present for Leo, a dinosaur encyclopedia she knew he'd love. As the bus climbed into the hills where the wealthy lived, she felt increasingly out of place in her simple dress and cardigan. When she reached the address, she stood frozen on the sidewalk. It wasn't just a house, it was an estate. a large modern mansion behind ornate gates with manicured gardens and a circular driveway. For a moment, she considered turning around. Whatever she had imagined about Dorian's life, it wasn't this. Who was he really? Before she could decide, the gates opened and Dorian jogged down the driveway to meet her. "You made it," he said, his smile genuine but his eyes anxious. "I was worried you might get lost." "Your software company must do very well," Imani said, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. Dorian sighed. "I should have been more honest. From the beginning. Can we talk inside?" Feeling like she had stepped into another world, Imani followed him up the driveway. The front door opened before they reached it, and a woman in what appeared to be a uniform nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Maria," Dorian said. "Is everything ready for the party?" "Yes, Mr. Wells. The cake is in the kitchen and the decorations are in the backyard as you requested." Mr. Wells. He was the kind of man who had staff. Imani clutched Leo's present tighter, feeling completely out of her depth. The inside of the house was beautiful, but not as ostentatious as she had feared. Modern, clean lines, lots of natural light, and surprisingly, children's toys and books scattered about. It looked lived in, despite its grandeur. "Leo's in the backyard with his nanny, Emma. She's just here for the party," Dorian explained, leading Imani to a comfortable sitting room. "I wanted a moment to explain before you meet everyone." "Explain what, exactly?" Imani asked, sitting on the edge of a sofa that probably cost more than her car. "Who are you, Dorian?" He ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable. "My full name is Dorian Wells. I founded Wells Technologies 15 years ago. We developed security software that's now used by most major corporations and governments." Imani's eyes widened. "Wells Technologies? The Wells Technologies? But that would make you wealthy." "Yes," Dorian finished for her, "and until 2 years ago, very much in the public eye." A memory clicked into place. She had seen his face before, on magazine covers, in news articles. Dorian Wells, tech genius, billionaire. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, hurt creeping into her voice. Dorian sat across from her, leaning forward earnestly. "Because the day we met in the park was the first time in 2 years that someone looked at me and just saw me. Not my money, not my company, not the tabloid stories about my divorce. Just a dad who lost track of his kid. He looked so vulnerable that Imani's hurt began to fade. When you didn't recognize me, it was like a gift," he continued. "And then we started talking, and you were so genuine, so kind to Leo. I didn't want to ruin it by bringing my complicated life into it." "But this is your life," Imani gestured to the mansion around them. "The real you." Dorian shook his head firmly. "No. The real me is the guy you've been talking to in the park. The dad who bakes mediocre cookies and worries about his son and looks forward to seeing you more than anything else in his day." He paused, then added softly, "That's the real me, Imani. The rest is just circumstances." Before she could respond, the door burst open and Leo ran in, his face lighting up when he saw her. "Imani, you came to my party." He threw himself into her arms, and Imani hugged him tight, her confusion momentarily forgotten. "Happy birthday. Leo, I brought you something." She handed him the present, which he tore into immediately. "Dinosaurs!" he shouted, flipping through the book with excitement. "Daddy, look, it has T-Rex and velociraptors and everything." "That's amazing, buddy," Dorian said, his eyes on Imani. "Why don't you go show Emma while I finish talking to Imani?" Once Leo had scampered off, Dorian turned back to her. "I understand if this changes things. My life is complicated, and I've worked hard to keep Leo out of the spotlight since the divorce." "Is that why you're always at a public park? Trying to be normal?" Imani asked. Dorian nodded. "We have a perfectly good yard here, but Leo needs to be around other kids, have normal experiences. And I need to remember there's a world outside of board meetings and business decisions." Imani thought about the man she'd come to know over the past weeks. Attentive, kind, devoted to his son. Was that man any less real because he happened to be wealthy? "I don't care about your money, Dorian," she said finally. "But I do care about honesty. No more secrets, okay?" Relief washed over his face. "No more secrets," he promised. Now, would you like to come to a 6-year-old's birthday party? There's dinosaur-shaped cake. The party was small but lovely. Just Leo, Dorian, Imani, the nanny Emma, and 2 boys from Leo's playgroup with their mothers. Imani noticed how the other women kept glancing at her curiously, clearly wondering who she was and what her relationship was to Dorian Wells. As they sang Happy Birthday and Leo blew out his candles, Dorian stood beside Imani, his hand tentatively. Finding hers, she didn't pull away. Later, after the other guests had left and Leo was playing with his new toys in the living room, Dorian walked Imani to the front door. "Thank you for staying," he said. "It meant a lot to Leo and to me." "I had a good time," Imani replied honestly. "Your home is beautiful." "It's just a house," Dorian said. "It doesn't feel like a home until—" He trailed off, looking embarrassed. "Until what?" Imani prompted. Dorian took a deep breath. "Until you're in it. These past few weeks, Imani, I haven't felt this way in a very long time. Maybe ever." Imani's heart raced. "Dorian, You don't have to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I know this is complicated. I know I come with baggage, literal and figurative." He gestured to the mansion around them. "But I'd like to keep seeing you if you want that too." Imani thought about her simple life, her teaching job, her sick aunt. How different their worlds were. But then she thought about Leo's laughter, about Dorian's kind eyes, about how she felt when she was with them. "I'd like that," she said softly. Dorian's smile was like the sun coming out. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned in and kissed her. It was gentle, warm, perfect. When they parted, Imani felt dizzy with happiness. "I should go," she whispered. "My aunt will be waiting." "I'll drive you," Dorian offered. "No, the bus is fine." "Imani," Dorian said firmly, "I'm not letting you. Take the bus. Not because I'm a snob, but because it's getting dark and I care about you. Let me drive you home." Put that way, she couldn't argue. The drive in Dorian's luxury SUV was quiet, both of them processing the new layer to their relationship. When they reached her apartment, Dorian walked her to the door. "Would you like to have dinner next week?" he asked. "Just the 2 of us?" "Maria. Can watch Leo." "Are you asking me on a date, Mr. Wells?" Imani teased. "I absolutely am, Ms. Walker," he replied with a smile. "What do you say?" Imani stood on her tiptoes and gave him a quick kiss. "I say yes." As she watched him drive away, Imani couldn't help but wonder what she was getting herself into. Dorian Wells was nothing like anyone she'd ever dated. His world was so far removed from hers, but her heart told her that none of that mattered. What mattered was the connection they shared, the way he looked at her, the way she felt when she was with him and Leo. What she didn't know was that their budding relationship was about to face its first real test. Because while Dorian had retreated from the public eye, the public had never stopped being interested in him, and a billionaire spotted kissing a beautiful woman was exactly the kind of story that sold magazines. As Imani entered her apartment, her phone buzzed with a text from Dorian. "Thank you for today, for understanding, for being you." She smiled and texted back, "Thank you for being honest, finally." What neither of them realized was that at that very moment, someone was making a phone call to a tabloid reporter, someone who had recognized Dorian Wells at the park and had been watching him and Imani for weeks. Their private little world was about to become very public indeed. Imani woke up Monday morning feeling lighter than she had in years. The memory of Dorian's kiss lingered, making her smile as she got ready for work. They had texted back and forth all Sunday, and he'd called in the evening just to hear her voice. "You seem happy today, Ms. Walker," said Lily, one of her kindergartners, as Imani helped her with her art project. "I am happy, Lily," Imani replied, surprised by how true it was. After school, she hurried home to check on Aunt Rose, who was having a good day for once. They sat together watching Rose's favorite game show. "You're glowing," Aunt Rose observed, studying Imani over her cup of tea. "Who is he?" Imani blushed. "What makes you think there's a he?" "Child, I raised you, I know that look." Rose patted Imani's hand. "Tell me everything." So Imani did, starting with finding Leo alone in the park and ending with the revelation of Dorian's true identity. "A billionaire?" Rose's eyes widened. "Like, private jet, mansion on a hill billionaire?" "He's more than his money, Aunt Rose," Imani said defensively. He's kind and devoted to his son, and when he looks at me, I feel like he really sees me." Rose's expression softened. "That's worth more than all the money in the world, baby girl. Just be careful with your heart. Men like that live in a different world." Imani nodded, knowing her aunt spoke from concern, not judgment. Wednesday was their planned dinner date. Imani spent far too long getting ready, finally settling on a simple blue dress that was the nicest thing she owned. When her doorbell rang, exactly at 7, her heart skipped. Dorian stood there looking handsome in a charcoal suit, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes taking her in with obvious appreciation. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she replied, accepting the flowers. "Let me put these in water before we go." As she arranged the flowers in a vase, Dorian stepped into her small apartment, looking around with interest rather than judgment. "Your home feels so warm," he said. "Like you." Before she could respond, Aunt Rose appeared in the doorway of her bedroom. "So this is the famous Dorian," she said, leaning on her walker. "Aunt Rose, you should be resting," Imani scolded gently. "I'm not dying today," Rose waved her off. "I wanted to meet the man who put that smile back on my girl's face." Dorian crossed the room and extended his hand. "It's an honor to meet you, Ms. Walker. Imani speaks of you with such love." Rose studied him, then took his hand. "You take care of her heart, you hear me? It's a precious thing." "I know exactly how precious," Dorian replied seriously. "Satisfied?" Rose nodded. "You kids have fun. Don't worry about me. Mrs. Gonzalez from next door is coming over to watch our shows." In Dorian's car, a sleek but understated luxury sedan, Imani finally relaxed. "Sorry about the third degree from Aunt Rose." "Don't be," Dorian smiled. "She loves you, I respect that." He drove them not to some exclusive restaurant as Imani had half expected, but to a small Italian place tucked away on a side street. "This is one of my favorite spots in the city," he explained as he held the door for her. "The owner doesn't care who I am, only whether I enjoy his food." Inside, they were greeted warmly by an older Italian man who embraced Dorian like family. "And who is this beautiful lady?" the man asked, beaming at Imani. "Marco, this is Imani Walker," Dorian said, a hint of pride in his voice. "Imani, this is Marco Rossi, the best chef in the city and an old friend." Marco led them to a quiet corner table and insisted on bringing them his special dishes. The restaurant was cozy and unpretentious, filled with the aroma of garlic and fresh herbs. Over incredible pasta and rich red wine, they talked for hours. Dorian told her about growing up as a nerdy kid obsessed with computers, about starting his company in his college dorm room, about the whirlwind success that followed. "And your marriage?" Imani asked carefully. "If you don't mind talking about it." Dorian's expression turned somber. "I met Vanessa at a charity gala. She was beautiful, ambitious, seemed to understand the demands of my work." He sipped his wine. "We married quickly, had Leo within the first year. I thought we were happy." He paused and Imani waited patiently. "The problems started when I wanted to step back from work to spend more time with Leo. Vanessa, she liked the lifestyle, the parties, the travel, the attention. When I suggested downsizing, focusing on family," he shrugged, "she showed her true colors." "That must have been painful," Imani said softly. Dorian nodded. "The divorce was ugly, public. Vanessa demanded half of everything plus alimony. I didn't care about the money, I just wanted custody of Leo. In the end, she agreed to sign away her parental rights in exchange for a substantial settlement." "She gave up her son for money?" Imani couldn't hide her shock. "She visits twice a year, when it suits her schedule," Dorian said bitterly. "Leo calls her Vanessa, not Mom. Her choice, not mine." Imani reached across the table and took his hand. "Leo is lucky to have you." Dorian's fingers tightened around hers. "After the divorce, I pulled back from public life, stepped away from day-to-day operations at the company, made our privacy the priority." His eyes met hers. "Until you came along, I thought Leo and I were better off alone." The intensity in his gaze made Imani's heart race. "And now? Now I'm not so sure," he said softly. The rest of the evening flew by. Dorian asked about her teaching, her dreams, her life with Aunt Rose. He listened intently to everything, asking thoughtful questions, clearly fascinated by her simple but fulfilling life. When he drove her home, he walked her to her door and kissed her good night with such tenderness that Imani felt her knees weaken. "When can I see you again?" he asked, his forehead resting against hers. "Tomorrow's Thursday," she reminded him. "The park?" Dorian smiled. "The park it is." For the next 2 weeks, they settled into a sweet routine. Park visits with Leo on Thursdays and Saturdays, dinners alone together on Wednesday nights, phone calls every evening. Dorian even came to help when Aunt Rose needed to be taken to a doctor's appointment, insisting on covering the cost of a specialist Imani couldn't afford. "You don't have to do that," she protested. "I want to," he said simply. "Please let me help." One Saturday, instead of meeting at the park, Dorian invited Imani to spend the day at his home. Leo was ecstatic, showing her every toy, book, and treasure he owned. They baked cookies in the enormous kitchen, played board games, and watched a movie in Dorian's home theater. It felt strangely comfortable, like she belonged there with them. When Leo fell asleep during the movie, his head in Imani's lap, she looked up to find Dorian watching them with an expression that made her heart ache with happiness. "What?" she whispered. "You fit here," he said simply. "With us." That night, after tucking Leo in, they sat on the patio overlooking the city lights. Dorian pulled her close, and Imani rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm falling in love with you," he said quietly. "I think I have been since that first day in the park." Imani turned to look at him, seeing nothing but sincerity in his eyes. "I'm falling in love with you too," she admitted. "Both of you." Their kiss was deeper this time, filled with promise and longing. For the first time in her life, Imani allowed herself to dream of a future that seemed too good to be true. She should have known it was. Sunday morning, Imani was making coffee when her phone exploded with notifications, text messages from colleagues, even parents of her students, all asking the same thing: "Is it true?" Confused, she opened the link someone had sent, and her world tilted. There on her screen was a grainy photo of her and Dorian kissing in the park. The headline screamed, "Tech, Billionaire Dorian Wells' secret romance with ordinary teacher." The article was worse. Reclusive billionaire Dorian Wells, who disappeared from public view following his messy divorce from socialite Vanessa Mitchell, has been spotted with a new love interest. The tech mogul, estimated to be worth over 4,000 billion, has been seen regularly meeting kindergarten teacher Imani Walker at a local park. Sources close to Wells say the billionaire is besotted with the ordinary teacher who makes less than $50,000 a year. Is this true love? Or is Ms. Walker just the latest woman to be dazzled by Wells's fortune? Vanessa Mitchell, Wells's ex-wife, declined to comment. Imani felt sick. They had printed her full name, her occupation, even an estimate of her salary. The comments under the article were worse, people speculating about her motives, calling her a gold digger, making crude jokes. Her phone rang. Dorian. "Imani, I'm so sorry," he said immediately. "I just saw it. I'm coming over." "No," she said, her voice shaking. "I need some time to think." "This is exactly what I've been trying to protect Leo from," Dorian said, his voice anguished. "What I wanted to protect you from. I'll have my lawyers contact the publication immediately, but the damage is done. There are parents from my school commenting on the article, Dorian. My principal has texted me asking if it's true. This affects my job, my reputation." "I know," he said softly. "That's why I kept my distance from everyone for so long. My life comes with this ugly side. I'm so sorry you're caught in it." Imani took a deep breath. "I need some time." "Of course," Dorian said, though she could hear the pain in his voice. "Take all the time you need, but please know that I meant what I said last night. I love you, Imani." After they hung up, Imani sat heavily on her sofa. Aunt Rose came out of her room, newspaper in hand. "You've made the society pages," she said dryly. "Page 3. Imani groaned and buried her face in her hands. "This is a nightmare." Rose sat beside her. "Is it? Because being loved by a good man doesn't sound like a nightmare to me." "It's not about Dorian," Imani explained. "It's about what comes with him. The scrutiny, the judgment, people thinking, I'm after his money. Since when do you care what people think? Rose asked sharply. The Imani I raised knows her own mind and heart. Before Imani could respond, her phone rang again. This time it was her principal, asking her to come in for a meeting before school the next day. Monday morning arrived with dark clouds threatening rain. Imani dressed carefully for her meeting, trying to look professional despite her lack of sleep. Principal Jenkins was waiting in her office, looking uncomfortable. Imani, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Several parents have expressed concerns about your relationship with Mr. Wells. My personal life has nothing to do with my teaching, Imani said firmly. Ordinarily, I would agree, Jenkins sighed. But they're worried about paparazzi showing up at the school, about their children being photographed, and frankly, so am I. Imani felt cold. What are you saying? I'm saying we need to be careful. Keep a low profile. Perhaps you should consider taking some personal time until this dies down. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a polite way of suspending her. I love my students, Imani said, fighting back tears. I would never do anything to put them at risk, Jenkins had the grace to look ashamed. I know that. This isn't personal, Imani. It's just complicated. Imani walked out of the school feeling numb. Everything she had worked for, everything she had built, was being threatened because she had fallen in love with the wrong man. Or rather, the wrong man's lifestyle. She didn't go to the park on Thursday or Saturday. She ignored Dorian's calls, responding only with brief texts assuring him she was okay but needed space. He respected her wishes, though his texts grew increasingly worried and sad. Leo sent her a drawing of the three of them with a message dictated to his father. We miss you at the park. The spy squirrels are getting away with everything. It broke her heart. A week passed. Imani was going stir-crazy in her apartment, caught between caring for Aunt Rose and avoiding the outside world where photographers might be waiting. Her school had officially put her on paid leave, and her students had sent her handmade cards that made her cry. Aunt Rose watched her mope with increasing impatience. This is ridiculous, she finally declared on Friday morning. You're in love with the man. He's in love with you. His little boy adores you. Why are you hiding in here like you've done something wrong? It's not that simple, Imani argued. Life is never simple, Rose shot back. But it's too short to waste being afraid of what might happen. That boy needs you, and if I'm being honest, you need them too. Before Imani could respond, there was a knock at the door. She opened it cautiously to find Maria, Dorian's housekeeper, standing there with an envelope. Mr. Wells asked me to deliver this personally, Maria said. He said it's important. Inside the envelope was a letter written in Dorian's neat handwriting. Imani, I understand why you needed space. The invasion of your privacy was unforgivable, and I feel responsible. You didn't ask for any of this. What you should know is that, since meeting you, I've realized how much I've been hiding from life. Protecting Leo was my excuse, but the truth is, I was protecting myself from being hurt again. You changed that. You showed me what it means to live openly, honestly, to connect with people without walls or pretenses. The irony is that I've now brought chaos to your ordered life. I won't pressure you, but I want you to know that I've taken steps to fix what I can. My lawyers have sent cease and desist letters to all publications that printed your personal information. I've spoken with your principal, don't be angry, and guaranteed funding for additional security at the school if needed. Most importantly, I've started looking at houses in normal neighborhoods, away from Oakwood Heights. Places where Leo could ride his bike on the street, where we could have neighbors who don't care about my bank account, where you might feel comfortable if you decided to be part of our lives. Because that's what I want more than anything, Imani. I want you to be part of our family. Leo asks for you every day. The park isn't the same without you. Our lives aren't the same. I love you, simply, completely. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real in a world where that's rare. Because you see me. Not the billionaire, not the media caricature, just me. If you can forgive the chaos I've brought to your life, if you can see a future with us despite the complications, please meet me at the park tomorrow at noon. Our usual. Bench, no pressure. No photographers. I've hired security to make sure of it. Just us. Whatever you decide, thank you for showing me what real happiness feels like, even if it was just for a little while. All my love, Dorian. Imani read the letter twice, tears streaming down her face. Aunt Rose took it from her trembling hands and read it herself. Well, Rose said when she finished, that's a man who knows what he wants. What should I do? Imani whispered. Rose took her hand. What does your heart tell you to do? Imani closed her eyes, thinking of Dorian's smile, of Leo's laughter, of how right it felt to be with them. She thought of the complications, the public scrutiny, the changes it would bring to her life. Then she thought of a life without them. I need to go to the park tomorrow, she said finally. Rose smiled. I thought you might say that. The next day dawned bright and clear. Imani dressed carefully in a simple yellow sundress, the same color she'd worn the day they met. Her hands shook as she applied minimal makeup and pinned her curls back from her face. You look beautiful, Aunt Rose said, watching from the doorway. Go get your family, girl. Imani hugged her tightly. I love you, Aunt Rose. I love you too, baby. Now go. As Imani approached the park, she saw two men in suits standing discreetly by the entrance. Dorian's security, she realized. They nodded, respectfully as she passed. Her heart pounded as she walked to their usual bench. Would Dorian be there? Would Leo? What would she say? As she rounded the corner by the playground, she stopped. There was Dorian, sitting alone on their bench, his head down, hands clasped nervously. He looked up, scanning the path, and then he saw her. The hope that bloomed on his face took her breath away. He stood as she approached, uncertainty and love battling in his expression. You came, he said simply. I came, Imani agreed, stopping, her a few feet away. Leo wanted to be here, but I thought we should talk first, Dorian explained. He's with Emma, going crazy with anticipation. He made you something. I missed him, Imani admitted. I missed you both. Dorian took a step closer. Did you read my letter? Imani nodded. Every word. I meant it all, he said, especially the part about loving you and about making changes. I don't want to lose you, Imani, not over things that don't matter. Your life matters, Imani said. Your home, your company. I would never ask you to change those things. You're not asking, I'm offering, Dorian insisted, because a house is just a house. But a home is where the people you love are. And for Leo and me, that's with you. Imani felt tears threatening again. The media attention won't just go away. No, Dorian agreed, but we can face it together, on our terms. I've spent 2 years hiding, Imani. I don't want to hide anymore, not from life, not from love, not from a future with you. He reached for her hand and Imani let him take it. I love you, she whispered. I tried not to, tried to be sensible, but love isn't sensible, Dorian said, smiling as he pulled her closer. It's messy and complicated and wonderful, like us. When he kissed her, Imani knew she was home. Whatever challenges came with loving Dorian Wells, they were worth it for this feeling, for the chance to be part of his and Leo's life. As they walked, hand in hand back toward the park entrance, Dorian's phone buzzed. He checked it and smiled. Leo's going crazy waiting, he said. I told Emma we'd pick him up on the way. On the way where? Imani asked. Dorian's eyes twinkled with excitement. To see the house I've been looking at. It's just a few blocks from your apartment, actually. Normal neighborhood, small yard, friendly neighbors. What do you think? Imani squeezed his hand. I think I'd like to see it. With both of you. As they reached Dorian's car, a photographer jumped out from behind a tree, camera flashing rapidly. Dorian immediately stepped in front of Imani, shielding her. Mr. Wells, is this your new girlfriend? Imani, how does it feel? To date a billionaire? Imani froze, her old fears rushing back. But then Dorian turned to her, his eyes asking a silent question. She took a deep breath and nodded. Dorian faced the photographer calmly. This is Imani Walker, the woman I love. And that's all you or anyone else needs to know. Taking Imani's hand firmly in his, he led her to the car, ignoring the continued questions and camera flashes. Inside the safety of the vehicle, Imani let out a shaky breath. That was the reality of my life, Dorian said apologetically. But I promise you it won't always be like this. We'll find our way, create our own normal together. Imani looked at him. This man who had stumbled into her life because his son got lost in a park. This man who saw her, valued her, loved her for exactly who she was. Together, she agreed. That sounds perfect. As they drove to pick up Leo, Imani realized that while her life had been turned upside down, perhaps that was exactly what she needed. Because sometimes the most beautiful beginnings came from unexpected moments, and a little boy lost in a park had led her to the family she never knew she was looking for. The house Dorian wanted to show Imani was nothing like she had imagined. Instead of another mansion, it was a charming two-story home with a wraparound porch and a modest yard. It sat on a tree-lined street in a neighborhood filled with families, small businesses, and a community park just 2 blocks away. Leo was bouncing with excitement as they pulled into the driveway. "Is this our new house, Daddy? Can Imani see my room?" "I picked the blue one," Dorian chuckled, exchanging a glance with Imani. "Let's show her around first, buddy." The inside was spacious, but not extravagant. Hardwood floors, large windows that let in natural light, an open kitchen that overlooked a cozy living room. It was nothing like Dorian's current mansion, but there was something immediately welcoming about it. "What do you think?" Dorian asked as Leo ran upstairs to check on his room. "It's beautiful," Imani said honestly. "But Dorian, you don't have to change everything about your life. Your home is just a house," he finished for her. "This feels more like a home to me, less like a fortress." He took her hands in his. "I bought the mansion after the divorce because I thought I needed to give Leo everything. But what he needs, what we both need, is normalcy, community, neighbors who wave when we take out the trash." Imani squeezed his hands. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," he said. "Except about how I feel about you." Leo's footsteps thundered down the stairs. "Imani, come see my room. And there's another one next to it that Daddy says could be for you." Imani's eyes widened as she looked at Dorian, who had the grace to look embarrassed. "I may have gotten ahead of myself," he admitted, "but I wanted Leo to know this was a possibility. If you're not ready..." Imani silenced him with a quick kiss. "Show me this room of mine," she said to Leo, who grabbed her hand and pulled her. Upstairs, the blue room Leo had claimed was perfect for a 6-year-old, with built-in bookshelves and a window seat overlooking the backyard. The room next door was smaller but charming, with its own ensuite bathroom. "Daddy said you could stay here sometimes," Leo explained matter-of-factly. "And then maybe all the time, like a family." Imani's heart squeezed at his hopeful expression. She knelt down to his level. "Would you like that, Leo, if I was part of your family?" Leo nodded enthusiastically. "You make Daddy smile, and you know about dinosaurs and spy squirrels." "High praise indeed," Dorian said from the doorway, watching them with a tender expression. As they toured the rest of the house, Imani could see it through new eyes, not as a downgrade from Dorian's mansion, but as a fresh start for all of them, a place where they could blend their lives without the shadow of Dorian's wealth looming over every interaction. "The sale is almost final," Dorian explained as they stood in the backyard watching Leo explore. "All it needs is one more signature." "Yours?" Imani asked. Dorian shook his head. "No, I've already signed. I meant yours." "Mine? But I'm not asking you to move in right away," Dorian clarified. "But I am asking you to be part of this decision. This isn't just my future or Leo's. I want it to be ours." The word hung between them, full of promise and possibility. "I still have my job to consider," Imani said slowly. "And Aunt Rose." "Of course," Dorian nodded. "I'd never ask you to leave your aunt. In fact, I was thinking..." He hesitated, then continued. "The house has a beautiful ground-floor guest suite with its own entrance. It would be perfect for Rose if she'd consider it, better than a third-floor walk-up with no elevator." Imani stared at him, overwhelmed by his thoughtfulness. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "I've thought about making a life with you," he replied simply. "Everything else is just details." That evening, over dinner at Imani's apartment, they talked practically about what a future together might look like. Dorian had already arranged for Imani to meet with the principal again next week, hoping to smooth her return to teaching. He'd also consulted with a publicity firm that specialized in helping public figures maintain privacy. "The photographers will lose interest eventually," he assured her, "especially if we're boring. No fancy galas, no dramatic scenes, just a normal family living a normal life." "A normal family," Imani repeated, testing the words. "I like the sound of that." As the weeks passed, their new normal began to take shape. Dorian and Leo moved into the new house. Imani returned to teaching, and though there were whispers and stares at first, her dedication to her students eventually overshadowed the gossip. Rose was hesitant about the idea of moving in with them, proud and independent as always. "I don't need charity," she told Imani firmly. "It's not charity, Aunt Rose. It's family," Imani insisted. "Besides, Leo adores you. He wants you to teach him how to play chess." Eventually, Rose agreed to at least visit the guest suite. Dorian had gone all out, making sure it was accessible and comfortable while still maintaining Rose's independence. "Well," Rose said after inspecting every inch, "I suppose it would be nice not to climb those stairs anymore." By the end of the month, Rose was settled in her new space. Leo was enrolled in the local elementary school, and Dorian had converted one of the bedrooms into a home office where he could work while remaining present for his family. Imani spent more and more nights at the Blue House, as they'd taken to calling it. She still maintained her apartment, but it felt less and less like home. One Saturday morning, as they prepared breakfast together in the sunny kitchen, Leo asked innocently, "When are you going to live here for real, Imani?" Dorian nearly dropped the pancake he was flipping. "Leo, we talked about this. Imani has her own place, and we need to respect that." But Imani had been thinking the same thing herself. In the 3 months since their reconciliation in the park, she had fallen more deeply in love with both Dorian and Leo. She loved their life together, the simple routines they'd established, the feeling of belonging she'd never experienced before. "Actually," she said, taking a deep breath, "I've been thinking about that too." Dorian looked at her, hope and caution warring in his expression. "You have?" Imani nodded. "My lease is up next month, and I spend most of my time here anyway," Leo shouted. With excitement jumping up from his chair, "You're moving in. Can I help pack your stuff? Can we paint your room? Can we—" "Whoa, buddy," Dorian laughed, putting a hand on Leo's shoulder. "Let's let Imani finish." But Imani was laughing too, Leo's excitement infectious. "Yes, Leo, I'm moving in, if that's still what your dad wants." Dorian crossed the kitchen in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. "It's all I want," he whispered, before kissing her thoroughly. "Oh, gross," Leo complained, though he was smiling. Life in the Blue House settled into a rhythm that felt like it had always been meant to be. Imani's things blended seamlessly with Dorian and Leo's. Rose's health improved with less stress and better care. The neighbors quickly accepted them as just another family on the block, more interested in whether they'd participate in the block party than in Dorian's net worth. There were still challenges, of course. Occasionally a reporter would show up hoping for a story. Dorian's ex-wife called one day, suddenly interested in spending more time with Leo now that Dorian was back in the public eye. Some parents at school were still standoffish with Imani, but together they weathered each storm. They were a team, a family bound by choice rather than obligation. 6 months after Imani moved in, Dorian suggested a weekend trip to the mountains. Just the 3 of them staying at a small cabin beside a lake. "What about Aunt Rose?" Imani worried. "Maria has already volunteered to stay with her," Dorian assured her. Rose said, and I quote, "Go enjoy yourself before you forget how." The cabin was rustic but charming, with a stone fireplace and a deck overlooking crystal-clear water. Leo was thrilled with the canoe Dorian rented, and they spent their first day paddling around the lake, picnicking on a small island, and spotting wildlife. That evening, after Leo had fallen asleep exhausted from their adventures, Dorian and Imani sat on the deck watching the stars reflect on the still water. "Happy?" Dorian asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Completely," Imani sighed contentedly. "This was a perfect idea." "I have another idea," Dorian said, his voice suddenly nervous. "But I'm not sure if it's too soon." Imani turned to look at him. "What is it?" Dorian shifted to face her, taking both her hands in his. "These past months have been the happiest of my life. You've brought joy and balance and love not just to me but to Leo, to our whole family." Imani's heart began to race as she realized where this was going. "I don't want to pressure you," Dorian continued, "but I also don't want to wait another day to ask you this." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Imani Walker, will you marry me? Will you officially become the family that you already are in our hearts?" He opened the box to reveal not an ostentatious diamond, as might be expected from a billionaire, but a simple, elegant ring with a sapphire the exact color of the lake before them. Tears filled Imani's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Dorian, I will marry you." The kiss they shared was a promise, a beginning, a confirmation of everything they'd built together. A noise from the cabin door made them turn. Leo stood there in his dinosaur pajamas, rubbing his eyes. "Did she say yes, Daddy?" he asked sleepily. Dorian laughed. "You were supposed to be asleep for this part, buddy." "I couldn't sleep," Leo yawned. "Too excited." "You knew about this?" Imani asked, opening her arms to him. Leo nodded as he climbed into her lap. "Daddy let me help pick the ring. Blue is your favorite color." "It's perfect," Imani assured him, holding out her hand to admire how the sapphire caught the moonlight. "Absolutely perfect. So we're really going to be a family?" Leo asked, his small face serious. "We already are a family," Imani told him, hugging him close. "This just makes it official." Leo seemed satisfied with this answer and soon fell back asleep, this time on the couch on the deck, snuggled between Dorian and Imani. As they sat there, their newly formed family complete under the stars, Imani thought about the strange path that had led her here. A little boy lost in a park, her father's gratitude, a connection neither of them had been looking for but both had desperately needed. "What are you thinking about?" Dorian asked softly. "About fate," Imani replied. "About how sometimes the best things in life happen when we're not looking for them. Like finding a family in a sandbox." Dorian smiled, kissing her forehead. "Exactly like that. The wedding was planned for the following spring. Nothing extravagant or showy, just a simple ceremony in the backyard of the Blue House with their closest friends and family." Rose insisted on helping with the preparations despite her health, declaring that she hadn't raised Imani to have someone else plan her wedding. Leo took his role as ring-bearer with utmost seriousness, practicing walking slowly down the makeshift aisle for weeks beforehand. The morning of the wedding dawned sunny and mild. Imani stood in what was now permanently her room, Rose helping, her with the final touches on her simple white dress. "Your parents would be so proud," Rose said, her eyes shining with tears as she adjusted Imani's veil. "Finding a man who loves you for exactly who you are, building a family with so much love." "I wish they could be here," Imani said softly. "They are, baby girl," Rose assured her, placing a hand over Imani's heart. "Right here." A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Leo peeked in, resplendent in his little suit. "Wow," he breathed when he saw Imani. "You look like a princess." "Thank you, Leo," Imani smiled. "Are you ready for your big job?" He nodded solemnly, holding up the little pillow with the rings. "Daddy said not to run even if I see a really cool bug," Imani laughed. Wise advice. Downstairs, their small gathering of guests waited in the garden. Dorian's parents, a few colleagues from school, some neighbors who had become friends, even Marco from the Italian restaurant. As the simple string quartet began to play, Imani took a deep breath. Rose squeezed her hand one last time before taking her seat in the front row, next to the space reserved for her as mother of the bride. Leo started down the aisle, focusing intently on not dropping the rings. Then it was Imani's turn, alone, strong, choosing her path. Dorian waited for her under an arch of spring flowers. When he saw her, his face transformed with pure joy. As she walked toward him, toward their future, Imani thought about all the steps that had led her here. All the choices, large and small, that had created this moment. Finding Leo alone on the swings, agreeing to coffee with his mysterious father, opening her heart despite the risks. She reached Dorian, who took her hands in his eyes never leaving hers. "You're breathtaking," he whispered. "So are you," she whispered back. The ceremony was short and heartfelt. They exchanged simple vows they had written themselves, promises to love and support each other, to put family first, to face whatever challenges came their way together. When it was time for the rings, Leo stepped forward proudly. As Dorian slipped the band onto Imani's finger, he added words that weren't in the planned ceremony. "This ring belongs to the woman who showed me what real love looks like," he said. "The woman who loved my son without reservation, who saw past the wealth and the walls to the man underneath, who makes our house a home and our lives complete." Not to be outdone, Imani added her own impromptu words as she placed Dorian's ring on his finger. "This ring belongs to the man who values what truly matters, who teaches his son compassion and honesty, who saw me as I am and loved all of me, who gave me the greatest gift of all, a family to call my own." By the time they were pronounced husband and wife, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. At the reception held on their patio and the adjoining lawn, Leo made an unexpected announcement, tapping his juice glass with a spoon to get everyone's attention. "I have a present for Imani," he declared. With Dorian's help, he handed her a large flat package wrapped in dinosaur paper. Imani unwrapped it carefully to find a framed drawing. It showed 3 stick figures, a tall man, a woman with curly hair, and a small boy between them. They were holding hands in front of a blue house with a squirrel nearby taking notes. Underneath, in Leo's careful printing, were the words, "Our family." "I made it the day we met you," Leo explained. "When you helped me in the park, I knew you were special." Imani knelt to hug him, tears streaming down her face. "This is the best wedding present ever," she told him. "I'm going to keep it forever." Later, as they shared their first dance, Dorian held her close. "Happy?" he asked, just as he had that night at the cabin. "Beyond happy," Imani replied. "I never knew life could feel this complete." "Because of you," Dorian said. "You walked into our lives and filled all the empty spaces." "We filled each other's spaces," Imani corrected him. "That's what families do." As the evening wound down, they found themselves sitting on the porch swing, watching Leo show Rose how to catch fireflies in the gathering dusk. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" Dorian asked. "If Leo hadn't wandered off that day in the park, if you hadn't been the one to find him?" Imani shook her head. "I think we would have found each other anyway. Some things are just meant to be." "My practical teacher wife talking about destiny," Dorian teased. "What happened to everything happens for a reason?" "Oh, everything does happen for a reason," Imani smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "And sometimes that reason is that a little boy needs his shoes tied, and the woman with the kind smile sitting nearby is exactly where she needs to be at exactly the right moment." "The stranger in the sandbox," Dorian murmured, kissing the top of her head. "Not a stranger anymore," Imani corrected him. "Family, now and always." As the stars came out over their blue house, the Wells family gathered on their porch. Dorian and Imani on the swing, Leo and Rose counting fireflies, their future stretching before them bright with promise. They had found each other in the most unexpected of ways, a chance meeting, a moment of kindness, a connection that defied explanation. And in doing so, they had created something beautiful, a family built on choice, on understanding, on love that asked for nothing in return. For Imani, who had always put others first, it was the gift of finally being seen for exactly who she was. For Dorian, who had hidden behind walls of wealth and wariness, it was the freedom to be vulnerable, to trust, to love without fear. For Leo, it was the security of knowing he was cherished, protected, surrounded by people who would always put his needs first. And for Rose, watching from her chair, it was the peace of knowing her beloved niece had found her place in the world, not in a mansion on a hill, but in the hearts of a man and a little boy who valued her for all the things that made her uniquely Imani. As night fell completely, Leo finally exhausted himself chasing fireflies and came to curl up between Dorian and Imani on the swing. "Best day ever," he yawned, his eyes already closing. Dorian looked at Imani over their son's head, his eyes filled with love and gratitude. "The first of many," he promised, and it was. The end.